for coming to my session here. Today I'm going to be talking about Realm. Quick show of hands, has anybody in here used Realm before? Okay. Anybody heard of Realm before? Okay. Anybody have absolutely no idea what this is? Oh, good, we have everything. Excellent. So Realm, for those of you that don't know, is a new mobile object database where you get to store objects and retrieve them as objects. So we're not going to be working with anything SQL. I will not be talking about SQL, except about how I don't use it anymore today, and so forth. So a little bit about me. For those who are not familiar, my name is Donn Felker. I'm an Android GDE. I'm an independent consultant right now at American Express. I run a website called caster.io, which is a website where we teach small bite-sized little bits of information. I've written a few books on Android, and I run a co-host a podcast called The Fragmented Podcast with Kaushik Gopal. Unfortunately, Kaushik is not here today or yesterday, but he is here in spirit, so he definitely would love to meet you all as well. And I have had various different applications inside of Google Play, and a couple of them in the top 100, which are still there currently. And so I've had quite a bit of experience with Android since 2008 and so forth. If you want to reach me, the best way is going to be through Twitter, and that's just at Donn Felker. I can reply to you because I am limited to 140 characters, because if you email me, I will probably try to write you a novel, and then it'll probably never get sent because I'll want to finish my thought later. So Twitter is the best way. So what is Realm? Like I said before, first and foremost, it does not use SQL. There's no SQL inside of Realm whatsoever. Let's just take a quick example just so you understand it here. If we want to store some data in Realm, we're just going to hop right into the code. This is how we're going to actually define a Realm object. These are regular, just plain old Java objects. Here we have a dog object. And to store something in Realm, there's a couple of ways we can do it. The first way is we can just go ahead and extend Realm object, which is what we're doing here. Now, we can also do it another way, which I'll get to in a second. In this example here, we have a dog object that has a primary key field. You know, we're all familiar with primary keys. That basically says, hey, this integer ID is the primary key. And then we can also throw some other annotations on a few other fields to say, hey, this dog's name is required, and then we have an integer that is not required. I've left out some other getters and setters in here just to save room on the slide so we could read it here. But this is how we can kind of store data in Realm. It's pretty easy to do. This object is now ready to be saved in Realm. Now, if I want to actually store that object in Realm, here's how I could do it. I can go ahead and new up an instance of that dog. Again, we're just working with plain old Java here. And then I can go ahead and get a default instance of Realm, say, hey, Realm, I need to work with you. And then at that point, I'm going to use a transaction here, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy that dog object into Realm. Now, at this point in time, the dog object's in Realm. That's it. I didn't write any SQL. I didn't do anything at all. The object's in there. I can query it back out, which I'll show you queries in just a moment. But now our object is in there. Here is another way in which you can also save an object. And this is the way I usually end up doing it. Going to go ahead and get a reference to Realm as well. We're going to create a transaction. We'll create that dog, but this time we create it a little bit differently. We tell Realm, hey, Realm, I want you to create an object for me, and create it of type dog. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the name and the age, and I'm going to commit the transaction and so for a second. So now there's also other ways to do this too. Maybe if you have a big, huge chunk of JSON or you're talking to an API, you can also actually just load the Realm database with that JSON file. Now you have to have the objects that are matching the schema, of course, of the JSON itself, but you can insert things, you can insert or update, and so forth. And so it's very, very useful in that regard. Now you may have noticed transactions. I just mentioned those briefly. Here, we're going to go ahead and issue a manual transaction. So this is just regular saving data. Now, if an exception occurs, we can call realm.rollback cancel transaction, which ends up rolling back the transaction. So if anything does happen for any weird reason, we can go ahead and cancel it out. Now that's a manual transaction. The recommended approach is actually like this. So we actually have an execute transaction call on the actual Realm database itself. So we'll say, hey, Realm, execute this transaction. We pass in a transaction instance of this transaction, and then we're given an instance of Realm at that point. So notice I didn't have to go get the default instance. I just said, hey, Realm, go ahead and execute this transaction, and I can do all my work inside of there. Now you'll notice here I'm actually doing something inside of here which is pretty interesting. I'm actually querying for a dog. I'm saying, hey, I want to find a dog whose name is equal to Fido. I'm going to get actually a list back. But here I'm just going to say, hey, give me the first one. And at that point I'm going to set the dog's age to 5. And at this point, right after we exit out of that transaction block, the data will save. If for some reason it fails, it'll roll back automatically. And there's actually an error call back in here too I didn't include, which you can do something when there's an error does occur. All right, so if we take a look at this, we're also going to do a little more querying here. And you'll notice I'm going to go ahead and get a list of dogs here. And notice realm results of dog. All this really is a glorified list of T. So if you think of this as a list of T, you can pretty much do everything you normally do with a list here. But it has a bunch of extra things on it for realm in itself. So we can actually start with realm. We can query for dogs. We can get a list back of dogs and do things with them. As you can see here, we can get the size of them. And maybe we've already inserted one like we saw before. Or we've already inserted many of them, but this time we only have one that equates to the age of 2. Now, I'm going to find them all. I can actually start chaining them together, which is very nice. This is a nice fluent query interface. So I can start doing other things on top of this if I want to start doing OR operations inside of realm as well. So I say, all right, I want to find all the dogs whose name is Fido or whose name is Snoopy, and I'm going to get back a list of all the dog objects who match those queries. And now I'm going to get back the objects. And again, I'm not getting back a cursor or anything like that. I'm getting back the list of dog objects in real time. So there's a whole bunch of different query modifiers you can use. These are a lot of the ones that you may have been familiar with. Another one was recently released, which is in. It's not listed in the list here, but it is included, so in. So you can do all different kinds of stuff like between, ends with, begins with. So these are all the common operations you're going to find. Maybe you want to do some type of head functionality. You can do the begins with. Realm is very, very fast. Because a lot of the stuff is all memory mapped inside of realm. So we're not going to be accessing a database, going through tons of layers, copying data through different types of architectures in the memory and so forth. It's all memory mapped, so it's super fast, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we talked about saving or retrieving a single type of object. What about object relationships? How do we put or deal with objects and their relationships? It's a common thing inside of most applications. So in this example is a many-to-one example. And the dog itself can be referenced by many people. Therefore, it's a many-to-one relationship. So this dog could also, if me and my wife, we have a dog, I could reference, that dog would be a reference to me, and would also be a reference to her. So many people are referencing this one dog. And that's all we have to do here. Now, person is a realm object, dog is a realm object. Realm underneath the hood is going to know how to make that correlation together. So we've already built this relationship. I didn't have to define any crazy foreign keys or anything of that nature. Now, if I want to save a many-to-one relationship, well, I can go ahead and create the dog and go ahead and so forth. And if you see line 3 here where I said person.setDog, just assume that we've already created a person before. I didn't want to create so much code here. And then we say person, hey, I want to set the dog. So maybe I got a new dog. I'm going to set the dog equal to that. And then I save it in a transaction. And that's it. The relationship is saved. So it's actually very simple. There's not really much to it. But we also have situations instead of just maybe you want to reference one object, you want to reference many of them. In that case, we need to use a realm list. And a realm list, again, some type of glorified list here, is just a list of dogs here. And realm, with a bunch of helpers underneath, is going to be able to handle all of the relationships for us here. So this person may have many dogs. And if I save many dogs, I can go ahead and retrieve these many dogs and so forth. So this can be automatically saved in here. And this is just a regular list too. So I could say dogs.add, and I could save that, and it would add another dog to list, and I could remove and so forth. Now there's also situations where you may want to actually kind of reference yourself for various reasons. And so in this case, we might have a person class, and the person has many friends, and those are also of type person. And so we can actually do recursive relationships here. So you can actually reference yourself, and realm will handle that as well. Now, querying relationships is a little bit different here. So let's assume we have the following model. So we have a person object, we have a dog object, and this is kind of what they look like. We're already a little bit familiar with this. We've talked about it for a couple of moments. Now let's assume that we have the following data here. On the left-hand side, we have a person table, we have Jane and John, and on the right-hand side, we have a bunch of dogs. And so it looks like Jane and John share a dog named Fluffy, which is ID number B there, and then we all see all the other dogs inside there. Now, we do notice that I'm not really sure what's up with John, though, because John has 3 dogs named Fluffy, but whatever, to each his own. So how would we go ahead and query this type of thing? Well, here's what we could do. We would return all person objects here. And so we're going to say, hey, realm, give me all the people who have dogs whose name is Fluffy. Now, what we're going to actually get back at this point in time is actually 2 person objects, and those person objects are going to be John and Jane. Now, if we go back and let's look at the data again real quick, we're actually going to see the first object is Fido for dogs. Now, that's Jane's dog. And if we look back at the relationship, the query here again, I'm saying give me all the people whose dog's name are Fluffy. That's going to give me back the person objects. Now, the actual reference underneath are the dogs. The Jane object is going to have all of her dogs in it because we're just saying, hey, in this query, give me all the people who have dogs named this. We didn't actually filter anything out in that regard. So that's something to keep in mind. If you want to learn more about relationships, you can get really deep into the link queries here, and you can kind of get into a lot of theory, which we don't have a ton of time for today. Check out this link here at bit.ly, which is bit.ly/Realm Relationships, and it'll link directly to the documentation on Realm's website. So it's pretty cool, it's pretty nice, it's easy to use so far, so a lot of people are kind of wondering, how do I use it? Well, it's, again, very simple to use. They use actually a Gradle plugin here, so you don't have to add a dependency inside of your build.gradle file. They'll do it for you through a Gradle plugin. And so what we do is we have a Gradle plugin here that adds Realm 2.0. Now, for those of you that are familiar with Realm, you'll know that Realm 2.0 was released this week. I have not had a lot of chance to work with it, so any questions you have around Realm 2, I may not know the answers, but let me know what they are, and I can reach out to the team directly. If you can't find the documentation or anything, you can't answer anything yourself, I'll help you find the answer, so let me know. So what we have to do is add this dependency to our root build.gradle file, and then inside of our applications build.gradle file, which is down on the bottom here, we're just going to apply the plugin for Realm Android. And that's it. Refresh your Gradle dependencies. You now have Realm, and you can go ahead and start working with it. So it's as simple as that. At that point, you can go ahead and start extending Realm object, or there's a lot of hype right now around annotations. You can also use the Realm annotation. If you don't like extending Realm object, you can just slap the Realm class annotation on there. Now, when you do this, you kind of lose some of the ability that the extension of extending from Realm object has, so you have to use Realm's actual static methods to interact with those objects. Such as it's shown here, regular Realm objects have a isValid method. You may have to call Realm that is valid. Sometimes you need to add a listener. Regular Realm objects, you'd say, hey, person.addChangeListener, which we'll get to change listeners in a second, and so forth. So if you do use the annotation, you just have to work with Realm just a little bit differently, so there's something to keep in mind. So the question I get a lot of times is, well, Donn, you keep talking about Realm all the time, you're tweeting about it, you're talking about how great it is, why do you use it? Simply, this is the fact right here. I have been working with SQLite. I've helped build SDKs around SQLite, and I have just fought it for such a long, long time. And the big thing for me is I just get to work with objects, and that's really powerful to me. I don't have to do a lot of context switching. All right, am I writing SQL now? Okay, do I need to do a raw query or execute query? Do I need to drop a table? Anything like that. I'm just working with objects, and that's where my domain is every single day. So here's another example here of where we're using, we're querying for a bunch of dogs, and they're chaining different things together. So you can see here we're doing the equal to. We're going to chain things together using another or an equal to. We're going to find all the dogs, and then we can do this fluent interface. Notice also, near the bottom, we can also do case-insensitive searches as well. So there's a whole bunch of options inside of Realm, which make it really, really useful. Now, this kind of had me sold right at the very beginning of like, okay, I don't have to write SQL. I can work with objects. It's super easy to store and retrieve objects. I never have to touch SQL again. All right, throw a party. Let's go home. But later, after I started working with the team at Realm and helping rewrite some of their documentation, I learned about something that I had no idea about, and that was Realm's reactive programming features, which really kind of blew my mind. And the one here in the gray text here is what really set it off, is that the query results will update automatically for you behind the scenes. And so let me show you what I mean by that. So let's say that we have a dog object here. Its ID is 123, and we found it and so forth. At that point in time, we can add a change listener to that object. And what we're basically saying is, hey, Realm, anytime this dog object change, I want you to call this little listener here. And so that's a listener right there. You see Realm change listener. Now, on the bottom half of the screen here, let's assume that that code is running in some type of asynchronous service, maybe an intent service or async task or RX or whatever. And we're going in here and we're going to go ahead and get the same dog, and now we're going to set the dog's age to 12 for whatever reason. Maybe it was a mistake. Well, that's been updated in some other asynchronous thread, and you're still looking at your screen. all of a sudden at real time, Realm will let you know, saying, hey, this dog object is changed, will automatically call your change listener for you. You don't have to set any like content observers or anything. You just add this little change listener, and that dog object will automatically be shown for you. And this happens at the next iteration of Android's run loop. If you're familiar and want to know how Android's run loop works, actually this very conference last year, Michael Bailey from American Express gave a talk on Android's main loop. So please watch that talk if you're interested and want to learn more about that. But upon the next iteration of Android's run loop, the change listener will be called. So you don't have to actually query for it. It actually just lets you know, saying, hey, this changed, and you can respond to it. That's cool for single objects, but you can also do this for a list as well. So in this case, I'm just saying, hey, I want to watch all the puppies. So any dogs that are less than the age of 2. And so I want to know when maybe that puppies list gets updated because I have, a puppy app where I'm showing all the latest puppies that are within 10 miles for whatever reason. If you're building the new puppy social network, let me know. So in some other thread, again on the bottom, we have a begin transaction, and we're going to go ahead and create a new dog, and we're going to set the age to 1. Now, as soon as this transaction completes, again on the next iteration of Android's run loop, that change listener up top will get called. When that change listener is called, that puppy's realm results right there is already updated. That object is already in that list. It's already done for you behind the scenes. So you actually already have all those values in there. So if you need to update any type of lists, anything on the UI, you now have that updated, that data is in there, and you know when to do it because the onChange method has been called for you. So furthermore, if you want to watch for individual objects, you want to watch for the queries, and sometimes you just want to know when the entire database or anything in the database has changed. And this is really useful if you're using some type of, for like a very small cache of some sort, and you want to know when a certain object has changed or anything of that nature, you can actually watch the entire Realm database itself. So anytime anything gets changed, you can go ahead and get called back. And so this could be a kind of a higher order thing of you want to do something to your application when any data in your application changes. Usually around this time, questions are asked like, all right, well, I want to know when the name on my dog has been changed. How do I do that? That is currently in development, and it is coming. So they are aware of it. There is an actual ticket on the Realm Java GitHub page where they're tracking all the progress on that. So that is coming, which is good news. Furthermore, a lot of applications you may build if you're in healthcare, you're in finance, you're in various different markets, security is a very important thing for you. Out of the box, Realm supports AES 256 encryption. All you have to do is provide it with a key. When you get, previously before I had said realm.get instance, you can actually configure a Realm. I usually do this inside of my application during onCreate, saying, hey, I like to configure Realm, and then here is going to be the default Realm configuration. You can store this as a singleton, do things through Dagger, et cetera, however you want to do it, it's fine. But here, I'm providing the configuration, and I'm setting the encryption key. Now, how you build this encryption key is up to you. You could be building it on the server, passing it down through your API, doing it locally. That's completely left up to you. And that encryption key will then encrypt all of the data. So if someone, for some reason, gets that Realm file for whatever reason, it's just going to be completely garbled with AES 256, which is super useful. And it's literally one line of code adding it to your Realm configuration. All right, so I think it's important to talk about, usually if someone has worked with Realm, the big elephant in the room is, all right, what about Realm's multi-threading? I have heard before that I can't pass Realm across threads, like Realm objects. I can't pass them across threads. Is that true? Yes, that is true. This is from the Realm documentation, and this is actually from one of the folks at Realm that I had spoke to, so it's a very good quote here. And the key quote that he states here is in here, and it says, if you need the same data on another thread, you just need to query for that data on the other thread. Now, a lot of people think, well, that's kind of weird. Google has taught me to pass objects through async task or whatever else. I'm going to get this back on a result. I need to pass it across a different thread for whatever reason. Now I have to kind of requery for that using the ID. That sounds kind of like a pain. There are multiple reasons for this, though. It's because Realm has decided to try to make life easier for you. The real key takeaway is that it makes it easy to work on multiple threads to make sure your data is safe. If anyone has ever worked with multi-threading and true multi-threading, and you start thinking about all the different, how fast time advances or when the time is going to advance across multiple different threads, it's just a ton to keep inside of your head, and most likely it's going to be very bug and error ridden. So if you think about it, if you try to keep those 3 or 4 different 5 things in your head, it can be which can be very difficult. And this is actually a quote from a paper written by Edward Lee, who's a PhD at Berkeley. And it's very, it's basically called the problem with threads. And the main thing he's trying to say is like, look, this is in the conclusion. Concurrency in software is super difficult. And just trying to keep track of all these things in your head is going to be very error prone. Even if you think you have it right, there's probably an error case you missed. And furthermore, testing all these different threads and all these different types of scenarios is very, very difficult. So let's talk about how are these situations normally handled when we're working in the context of threads. Well, if we want some data to be available on thread A, but maybe we want to read from it or write to it from thread B, well, we normally have to slap a lock around that. And vice versa. So reads and writes, everything starts needing locks all over the place. And eventually, everybody is blocked because there's locks all over everything, and that slows down the application. And that the big deal is plain and simple, is that locks are just completely slow. So Realm removes that capability, saying, all right, well, you just can't pass things across threads, and so now we don't have to worry about locking everything up, which makes us, a lot faster. And that's not the only reason that they're fast, but it does help a lot. So there are a couple of threading options for Realm. For the longest time, Realm said, yes, you can use Realm on Android's main thread. Usually this is blasphemy and heresy in Android, and most people would never think of doing such a thing. I have done it with success. Doesn't mean you should do it, but what is recommended is to use the asynchronous API, which will actually do things in background threads for you. So how do you use this asynchronous API? We've already seen how to do it synchronously. This is the async API right here. Notice the only thing that we're really doing different on the top line here and the very end of it is adding the word async to it. What happens here is immediately the code will continue. The query has now been fired off in the background. The Realm results of dogs is just an empty list. It's not null. It's just an empty list, so you're not going to get any null pointer exceptions. You can add a change listener saying, hey, Realm, let me know when you're going to be done, and then we can go ahead and continue on that way. And that's going to go ahead and be for a list of dogs. You can also do it for an individual object as well, and you add a change listener to that individual object as well. So the big thing to think of is, like, all right, well, I want to use the asynchronous API. You're just going to tack on the async word to the end of all of your calls, and everything will go ahead and become async for you. It'll be done in a background thread for you. Here's another asynchronous call. This time, we're going to go ahead and execute a transaction asynchronously. So again, we have puppies.size, second line here is 0. So same thing here. Again, we're slapping on the async word on the end of execute transaction. This time we're actually given the Realm that we can work with because it gets in a different thread, so we need a different instance of Realm. At this point, we'll create the dog. We're set to the age of whatever. That's actually a typo. That should be 2. Actually 1. That should be a set dog age of 1. And then we'll go ahead and as soon as it's done, the bottom line, which is a callback saying, hey, this write has been completed, will be called, and this puppies.size would be the size of 1 at that point. Again, that set age should be a 1, not a 3. That is a typo on my fault. All right, so what about RxJava? That's a big thing that a lot of us are using nowadays. Jake just gave a talk about RxJava 2.0 yesterday. So what about RxJava? Is it supported or not in Realm? There is some support for RxJava at this point in time. Here's an example. There is a as observable call that we can tack onto any of these basic asynchronous calls, which we're doing here. So we're going to do a find all async, which is going to be on the third line there. We're going to tack on an as observable. This turns us into an Rx observable that we can use. Directly after that, we call a filter. And on the filter says persons that is loaded. That is loaded method basically says, hey, has the query completed from Realm and has the data set been loaded? Initially, it's going to return false because it's going to be executing in the background. As soon as it returns true, the execution will occur here. And all this example does is just actually goes up to GitHub, finds some stats for them, and shows the stats for them. And that's in the example app that you see here in Rx Realm Java. So the only stipulation here is that you notice there's no schedulers listed in here. You cannot provide a scheduler. So you say, hey, run this on schedulers.io. For those of you familiar with Rx, it means run it on the IO bound scheduler. You have to use the asynchronous stuff here for Realm. So the scheduler support is not built in. They are working on some type of mechanism to maybe provide like some type of Realm scheduler. That's again tracked on the RxJava GitHub page. So again, the big question is, all right, well, can we use it on the main thread? You could if you want to. I currently do on a lot of my applications. I have not ran into any problems whatsoever. Okay. So I use it and it works fine, but it's recommended that you go ahead and use the asynchronous API, add a change listener, and you can respond to those changes very reactively. It's pretty easy to use. Or you can go ahead and use the Realm's RX Java stuff and go ahead and react that way. So now, why is it possible, though, to run on the main thread? Well, plain and simple, it's because Realm is very fast, but that's usually not a good enough definition of, like, why is it fast? We're usually developers, we want to know what's going on underneath the hood. There's an article that I helped author here, which is Realm's Threading Deep Dive. It's quite long. It goes into the very deep internals of how Realm works, but at a high level, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. Realm's database is an MVCC database. It's a multi-version concurrency controlled database. There's actually many different versions that are running in line. If you're familiar with database theory, there's different writes and things are getting combined and merged and so forth. So there's a bunch of different things that are writing different versions at the same time and things are getting managed behind the scenes for you. The entire database is memory mapped, basically making the object retrieval super efficient and very minimal. So instead of having to go down and open a cursor window, go down all the way to a file, open a file on the disk, read that file in, scan the file, find everything in it, pull it back out on every single query. Everything is just memory mapped when we first open the Realm database up. So when we get that list of dogs back, we have 500 dogs in there. They're not all in memory. They're just memory mapped. So I say I want to get the 50th dog in that list. It's just going to go straight up actually directly into the Realm. Say, hey, give me that dog object. So we have low memory access, low memory footprint, but at the same time, it's super efficient for you. And so accessing the objects is literally like touching the Realm directly. So it's very, very quick. It's not all stored in memory at once. It's just memory mapped. So if you want to learn more about that, check out the Realm threading article. It goes very deep in depth with diagrams and all different kinds of stuff. So what happens if you need to change your model? If those of you from different backgrounds, for example, folks that are from Rails are very familiar with schema migrations and Rails migrations. And so Realm has a very similar concept known as a migration, and it's a Realm migration. Here's an example here. We may have built our dog application, and we're showing dogs. Now we decide we need to add people to it, or a person object. And that's what this migration is doing here. At this point in time, we're given the old version and the new version of the database. As soon as the migrate method has been called, we're going to go ahead and get the schema, and then we can start doing things with it. You need to check your version. So again, if you're 10 versions down, you want to make sure you're updating accordingly. But here, all we're doing is adding a person object with a field ID that's a long, and it's going to be the primary key. It's going to add a name, it's a string, and an age, it's an int. And that's it. Now, at this point in time, as soon as the migration is complete, which is how it's set down below, we just say, hey, here's the current schema version, which we're just saying 1 here, and here's the migration file. We pass the migration file. It'll run as soon as the application is started. So if you have shipped an application in Google Play, today you add a feature, we're going to add this person object, you update that schema migration value by 1 and update your migration, and you ship out a new version. This schema migration will be run, and that new person object will be created inside of Realm. Now you also need to make sure that you're creating the actual person Java class as well. So you can't just create this and go off to the races. You actually need the Java file that it maps to as well, so you can access it in code. So don't forget to create that POJO. Another cool thing about Realm here is there's actually an OS X browser. So if you are interested in being able to browse the actual data that's in the Realm file, you can pull the Realm file off of your application, your emulator, whatever, and open it. When you open a Realm browser, here's kind of what it looks like. There's a dog and there's an owner. And in this case, it's called an owner class instead of person, but you get the gist. These are all of the fields that are inside the database. So here we have a name, a height that is a float. We have a birth date that is a date in here. You can actually double-click these values and edit them and so forth. There is a Boolean value that shows up a checkbox. And then we have a relationship here, which is the owner of said dog. You can actually click on that, so it's like a link in an HTML page. And it'll take you directly to that owner itself. So you can actually interact with the data. Now here's the cool thing is Realm is not just based for Java. They have bindings for Java, Cocoa, Swift, React Native, I think maybe even some more. There's a bunch of different bindings in there. And a very common situation is one platform will be using Realm, and the usual case, unfortunately, is someone builds an application, an iOS application, says, hey, we need the Android version. If they're using Realm, what they can actually do is give you that Realm file, and you can go ahead and open it with the Realm browser and say, all right, I want you to save the Java definitions, and it will save all the Java files for you based on that same object model. And then you can pull those directly into your application. So you can be following the same object model as the Objective-C application if they're using Realm as well. So very, very useful. You can do, or you can do it vice versa. Open up the Java one because it's just a Realm file, same format. Save out the Objective-C or Swift definitions. Now, earlier this week, the Realm 2.0 version was released, and with that, they released the Realm mobile platform. So what this means is now there is a server-hosted solution for Realm. So Realm can run in the cloud, and it provides client-server sync and conflict resolution right out of the box. So you can, they have some AMIs, some AWS AMIs, or some Linux instructions, how you want to get that up and running on Linux. They are currently working on getting a Docker instance up, so you can just kind of pull that Docker instance and get going. But this is very useful because now you can actually just tell your local Realm instance to sync with the remote server, and everything's kind of done for you behind the scenes. And it resolves the conflicts using a lot of cool algorithms behind the scenes, all kinds of documentation. I have not had a chance to hop into it deeply. Hopefully that is what next week I will be doing. So definitely check that out if you're interested in also this server-side solution as well to make data a little bit easier for you. All right, so what's coming next? There's hopefully some more better support for RxJava, some custom schedulers, more platforms as well. They're always working on additional platforms. When I started helping them out, it was just Objective-C, Swift, and Java. They have since come out with a few other flavors as well. So it's very, very useful. And of course, they came out with the server sync stuff. So lots of stuff in the pipeline. Where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna get it? You're just gonna go to realm.io. All the installation instructions there. You can download the binaries. You can link to the source code. You can read the docs. All that kind of good old stuff. Next question is, how much does Realm cost? Realm is actually free. Realm makes money through enterprise customers who need support and so forth. So it's free for everyone who wants to use it. I've been using it in multiple production applications for a while now with success. Again, totally free. They're all open source, which is really nice. So if you want to go check out what's going on inside of Realm and your Java developers, so the best place you can go here is go to the Realm Java repository. This is very active. I bet if you went there right now, it would probably have been updated within the last few hours. That's how active it is. If you have run into an issue, open it on their issue tracker. They are very, very responsive. You will see lots of issues in there. Doesn't mean there's tons of problems. It just means there's a lot of stuff that they're working on, and they will have those conversations right out there in the public. They are very good proponents of doing things open source and out in the public. Furthermore, with the 2.0 release, these are just the bindings. So you'll see Realm Java, you'll see the Swift bindings, you'll see the Objective-C bindings. The core database, which is a C++ database, was always internal until this last week, and now that is actually out in the open. So if you have a background in C++ or you want to see how the guts of this thing work, it is now completely open source, so you can actually go check it out, and that's going to be at Realm's GitHub page, so it's github.com/Realm. Everything sounds good, and it's puppy dogs and ice cream and rainbows, but there's always some problems along the way. Here's the not so good. There's no custom Rx Java schedulers yet. It's a complete paradigm shift for most people here that want to get into Realm because you're not passing objects across threads. So you need to be aware of how to do that, what you're going to run into. You're going to run into weird situations that you're not used to solving because you're used to passing these objects across threads. So it does take a little bit of a paradigm shift for you to get over to that Realm way of thinking. And there's also no composite primary key constraints just yet. Again, they are working on these things, and they are tracking them inside of the Realm Java GitHub page, so go check those out. All these are tracked. Of course, the paradigm shift is not. That's just a required thing there. So who's using this on Android? This list is actually even a little bit out of date now, but it's still quite relevant for some social proof to see if it's even worth looking into. So we have the folks over at Genius, Starbucks, Shop Savvy, Virgin Mobile, Subway, a whole bunch of different folks out there are using Realm at this time in production. So it has a lot of use out in the world right now. And that's just this is the Android stuff. For iOS, it's even further. You have Groupon, McDonald's Zipcar, BBC, all these are companies that you're familiar with. So a lot of folks are trusting this to their underlying data source, and it's very useful. Now, we covered a lot of information today. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. I can answer questions now, or I should be here the rest of the day, and we can sync up. And as usual, you can reach me at Donn Felker on Twitter, or just come by and say hi. Thank you, guys.
So how would you handle lists and pagination?
So when you have like like when you're scrolling.
Yeah. Well,
So let's say you have like 100, let's say you have 10,000 records in there, right? All those records are not pulled into memory at once. So as you query for that and you get that list of 10,000 dogs back, it's just memory mapped. So you can actually just scroll through the list. It's not going to actually pull them all into memory at once. So as you request them, then it gets them and maintains the memory accordingly.
Are there any ways to request like maybe a smaller format of an object? So like you have an object and it has a lot of relationships, and if you were to follow the entire tree, it could get large.
Like, say if you had 10, like the object graph was kind of large.
Yeah, and like you're scrolling through a list, and you really only need like a couple fields off of that object.
Oh, and you want to create a projection to only create?
it's fine.
Not that I know of at this time, no. But I haven't run into any of those issues, and I've had pretty large object graphs. So yeah, it only pulls. So if you're going to pull in, I need this integer from this field, and I need to go down 3 relationships and grab the integer from this field and a string from this one way down here, it's only going to pull those 3. It's not going to pull the whole object in.
How compaction works in reality?
Compaction? I am not familiar with how the compaction works. I know that it is recently released compaction for encryption for the encrypted realms as well. So I don't know about the compacting.
So you have to do it manually, or like Realm automatically handles it?
You need to do that manually. So if you want to compact the realms, because they can grow a little bit because of the multi-version concurrency control, you want to go ahead and compact those. Usually it's recommended, I believe, to do that upon the initialization of the realm, usually in the application class, which could slow down a little bit of your startup time, but shouldn't be significant.
Have you done any sort of comparison with SQLite regarding the performance of it, or is it?
There's a lot of comparisons out there. The problem with doing any type of benchmarking on Java is the GC is indeterminate, so we really don't know when it's going to run. It just kind of does it when it wants to. So it's really hard to get a realistic, this is the true benchmark. There's a lot of folks that have done them out there. Some say Realm's faster, some say SQL's faster. Kevin, who is one of the sponsors, the organizers of the conference, did ORM Lite, and he's done his comparisons. The Realm folks have done their comparisons, so it's kind of all over the board. Some say some things are faster or not. So there is no actual benchmark right now because it's very highly contended. There's someone over here? Yes.
What's testing like?
Testing can be a little bit of a pain because Realm is relying on Android and the run loop to be there. So what you have to usually do is rely on PowerMock to start mocking some of these things out. Yeah. Which there's examples in the Realm repo, and there's a unit testing examples project, and I actually wrote part of that one, so it's using PowerMock. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know.
So for the threading, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that, right? Like if you have something that's going to be intent service pattern,
Yeah.
is the realm kind of way to do that? Like run your background thread, talk to your network, write something in the realm, call back to the main thread, and then re-query with like the async API, or what's the kind of realm pattern?
So that's a good question. For those that didn't hear, what's the pattern for you're doing something in a intent service, and you also need to do something in the main thread to watch for those changes. Is that correct? Okay. So in that instance, normally on the main thread, you're going to maybe, let's just say you're watching a list of dogs, right? You're going to query for that list of dogs. You're going to add a change listener to that, and that change listener is just going to kind of hang out. It's not going to do anything, maybe. And then in the background, for whatever reason, somebody clicks a button, GCM request comes in, it kicks off an intent service. That intent service is going to open its own instance of Realm. It's going to insert 50 dogs or whatever. And at that time, as soon as the transaction commits, that main thread's on change handler is going to get called for you. That's the reactive nature of it. So you don't have to requery. It'll just get called, and that list at that point in time is already up to date.
So the pattern is query, then update, and listen to the changes.
Yeah, you just have to hang out and listen. Just add your change listeners, and they'll call you. Don't call us, we'll call you kind of pattern.
Can you specify the Realm database in SD card that you share? So different applications can share the same Realm file.
SD card, I haven't done anything of that nature, but I'm not sure if that would be possible. I don't see a problem with it right now. That's a good question. I could follow up with them and ask. They'll get your contact information and all. Well, thank you guys again for coming. Appreciate it.